We are getting a community consensus and decision moving forward related to your facilities and any facilities improvements that you may want to make. I do have a number of people on Zoom, so I just want to double check that they can hear me.
Yep, you're good.
Okay, they say we're good. The meeting is being recorded. There is a website. If you've not had a chance to check it out, it has all the past meetings on there, PDFs of the presentations, so you can see all of that if you so desire, if you want to get caught up. How many people, I'm just curious, is this their first meeting? Okay, good deal. That's good to see some new faces. We have a number of things on the agenda tonight that we want to cover. I'm going to do a welcome and a recap. I'm not going to go through every bit of information that we've done related to the studies so far. In that process, I'm going to hit it kind of at a high level for those of you that are new. If you want to hear more about that, you can see those previous presentations, or you can chat with me afterwards, and I'd be happy to give you some of that information. We do have a bit of a financial recap we want to go through with you, a little bit more information on that, some enrollment analysis and trends, the survey results. So each one of these meetings, we presented you with a survey. We like to share those results at the following community meeting so that everybody can see kind of what the trends are, where the momentum may be at in this process. So we're going to share those survey results. We're going to go back through these ideas and concepts so that we can start to narrow down a focus. So we've eliminated one of the options. We're going to go back through those. I want to talk to you about focus groups. So if you're interested in, we've come up with these 7 different categories. If you're interested in one of those specifically, we would like you to participate in that. And then any next steps, questions, when the next meetings are, some of those things. So quickly, my name is Derek O'Neill. I'm with Ali Pointer Maquetto Architecture. We are your design consultant. We have Emily Bannock here tonight with Boyd Jones as the construction manager that the school has hired also to help with this process. We also have a couple engineers, ETI Engineering and then Larson Engineering. And then obviously an important part of this whole process is you as the community members that make up the East Mills Community School District. Some goals from this process: safety and security for students and staff, providing environments that enhance and improve the educational experience for all students and staff, maximize existing square footage and space, enhance community pride in the schools, move forward with a community-based solution, and then any others that come out of this. And I imagine we'll have some more goals as we move through the focus groups. Objectives in this process: an East Mills first attitude. You might ask, what does that mean? It means we're always going to look at what's best for the school district, not what's best for one individual community as you move through this process. It's always about the students and the education of the students. We want to make decisions that provide the best education possible for the students of East Mills, and we want to ensure the long-term fiscal viability and responsibility of the school district. So for those of you that are new, and to those of you who have seen this, just quickly, our process is: where are we now? Where do we want to be? And how do we get there? So the where are we now piece is we've gone through, we've analyzed all of your facilities, we put scores to them, we've come up with costs that you may need to consider over the next 12 months, 1 to 5 years, 5 to 10, 10 plus year scenarios. You'll hear me talk about short-term, mid-range, and long-term implementation concepts. But that's kind of the where are we now. I also call it the status quo or the baseline. If you choose to not do anything, which is certainly an option, you still will have a certain level of cost input into your facilities based on age of systems, age of the buildings, as you move forward through the next 10 years. The where do we want to be? So if you're going to have that input of dollars into your facilities, do you want to do anything different? Do you want to make some bigger improvements? So that's why we are here tonight and through this process is to discuss if any of those improvements, are there things that the community would support or things that the community wants to see? And then how do we get there? That's the piece where we've started to put cost estimates and dollars and what it may mean to you as a community member and taxpayer in the school district. We've gone through kind of eight steps here. We're towards the bottom of this list with 6, 7, and 8. So we've assessed the current deficiencies and needs, life safety, handicap accessibility, age of systems, things are coming to the end of lifespans. That's that status quo or the baseline. Provide comparable information. So you'll see we've got some financial information comparable to other school districts. I've given some examples of what other school districts may do from a standpoint of having multiple buildings and multiple campuses. We look at operational deficiencies, again, because you have multiple communities and multiple schools that make up your school district, there are just some operational deficiencies that you have that other school districts do not. Educating a diverse community committee. There is a facilities committee that is a part of this. They take all of the input, they take all of the survey input, help us formulate a plan moving forward that they believe has buy-in from the community and that they can recommend to the school board for adoption. So hopefully at the end of this, we have a master plan that says, we want to go in this direction. We believe the community supports it. We've had 6 meetings to allow for input. People have had an opportunity to voice their opinion. This is where we think we need to go as a school district. Looking at sources and uses of funding, we've had a financial consultant with Piper Sandler here a number of times, giving you information on the financial health of the school district and where you're at with any potential scenarios for how to fund any facilities improvements. And again, this master plan and implementation concepts, we may have a master plan that says, we want to get to this point here, but right now we're gonna only bite off this chunk and we're gonna do this piece. But we don't want to do something, whether it's an addition or a renovation, that in 10 years we wish we would not have done because we didn't think long-term about what that master plan may be. And then I mentioned, the focus groups. That's another piece of getting some more detailed information. There's a lot of ideas out there. There's a lot of things that I would call wants. And so those focus groups will help present information back to the community that helps to prioritize things, not just wants, but what are the actual needs out of that list and what are the priorities as we move forward. So from a financial assessment standpoint, there's a number of sources and uses that you can use as a school district to help pay for any facilities improvements. You have a voted PEBBLE. We have the penny sales tax, the SAVE or the silo tax, the secure and advanced vision for education. That penny sales tax is anytime any dollars are spent around the state, that is divvied up and comes back to you as a school district. Options for a property tax levy. We've got some more of that here tonight. You've seen that a couple of times at previous meetings. There's some information on that related to your handout there tonight. We have the ability to do energy audits, provide options for utility upgrades, any energy efficiency upgrades, and what sort of rebates and refunds and cost sharing there are available to a school district for that. And then what areas would be good for any private donations? These are all kind of your sources and uses. If this stuff really gets you excited, there is a financial focus group that I'm going to show you later. You can sign up to be a part of that and help bring that information back to the community. So this chart you've seen before. This is your 10-year history on your levy rates in your school district. So it is broken out by historic Malvern and historic Nishnah Valley. When you voted to become a combined school district, part of that vote was that the levy for the improvements at the elementary building were going to stay with the taxpayers in that old Nishnah Valley school district. So that's why you have the 2 charts. We did a 10-year average. So you can see the 10-year average for Malvern is 1136. For the Nishnah Valley payers, it's 1272. That'll become more important as we go through this here, but you've been as high as 1445 and 1588 in 2012. And then this year you're down at the 952 and the 1168 numbers. This shows you then how those current levy rates, not the average, but the current levy rates for 2021, how they compare to other school districts around you. That may be a question as you start to look at open enrollment out numbers. Why are students leaving the district? What are the reasons? Is it facilities? Is it something else? So you can see as you look down here, your levy rates are towards the bottom of that list, with Glenwood, Red Oak, Traynor, Griswold, Sydney, Riverside, Shenandoah, Essex, Fremont Mills, and Lewis Central all being higher than you from a levy rate standpoint. This chart just quickly shows you property valuations by category. I'm not going to go through all of that, but if you want to, you can see that information in the slides through the website. These charts begin to show you what can be generated with potential levy rates that could be added into your district. So you'd have to vote on these. The school board has not said this is what they're going to do by any means. No decisions have been made, but this is information for you. They want to see how the community feels about this before they decide to move forward with anything. So this chart shows you with a $1.35 increase, that there's approximately $14 million that could be generated for facilities project costs. You want to talk? Yep. Okay. We're going to let Mr. Hood talk here. And I'm going to switch over the mic inputs real quick, Tim.
Good evening. I apologize for being a little late. We may begin up. Now, I would like to do that is our tax rate next year will be in the $9.40 range in Malvern area. And when we get the bonds paid off a year from now, everything will equalize. So if we use that $9.40 range for tax purposes, $2.70 tax rate increase is the upper echelon of what we're talking about at all. Okay? So if you take $9.40, you add $2.70 to it, you come up with $12.10. And if you look on this sheet right here, $12.10 would put you lower than everybody except Lewis Central. Okay? So you could look at updating your facilities and recruit people here, not only because we've done a great job academically, but our facilities would also be top-notch as well. So again, $12.10 is what the information would be at the very top end. Okay? If we do less than $2.70, you're going to be lower than everybody here. So something to look at. We've worked hard here as far as tax rates, and I cannot take a lot of that credit. The predecessors and the boards did that. But again, I've sat in front of these meetings and people, and you can say to them that your tax rate moving forward is less than your averages. That's pretty impressive, folks. Just so you know, that's hard to do. Okay? So just keep that in mind. Upper end will be in that 12-10 range. And again, it's lower than everybody but Lewis Central, and that's just by a smidge. So would you like for me to go over this? Anybody that's new? Would you like me to go over through the sheets and all those kind of things? No way. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
Okay, so I'm just going to pile onto what Tim said there a little bit. And he had some new information on levy rates there after things are paid off and what that looks like in the future. You'll see some additional charts here that I've also put in here to kind of help correlate that to where you've been in the past and what he's proposing here as an option moving forward in the future. So he talked about the $2.70 increase. That generates around $21 million worth of funds that could be done for facilities improvements. If you've been to these meetings and you've seen the options that we've presented before, there's ranges out there they probably average all around that $20 million range. We've got things as low as 15 million, and there's some that are up in the $28 million range, but the average of all of it is right around that $20 million. So these charts then begin to show you, particularly if you go to this one that's the 270, if you want to see, for example, what that increase is in taxes for that $20 million worth of facilities improvements over your current rate. So you keep in mind, you've got really low school levy rates here at the moment. So off your current rate, if you have a residential property, let's say that's a $200,000 residential property, the tax increase for that $20 million is $24.29 per month to a person that owns a $200,000 home in this school district. All right, so for $20 million and a $200,000 house, that tax increase is $24.29. And that is over that current levy rate. So you're down at those $9 and $11 rates. You've been higher. So in the past 10 years, you've paid more than that, significantly more than that. So that shows you where that is at. We've also got commercial property on this chart. So if you are a commercial property owner, there's also some ag land valuations. The bottom chart is on a per acre basis. This second page gives you examples then based on an average assessed valuation and 40, 80, 160 on up kind of acre scenarios. So if you have agricultural land, you can see what that impact would be to you also. So again, we showed the average rates. You know, you've had your 10-year highs in the 15 and the 14 range. Right now, you're down in the 950 and the 1160s. You will be at, Tim was saying, if then when the bonds are paid off for all of the facilities projects that you've had here, and you have one combined rate, a $2.70 increase puts you at a total levy rate of $12.10. Okay, so you can see that based on this chart and your 10-year averages, you're below the historic 10-year average for Nishnah Valley, and you're still less than $1 increase on the Malvern historic average. What we did on this chart is just show you from where you're at now on your valuations, where that 270 would be compared to that 10-year average. So on the historic Malvern, you would go from 1136 10-year average up to the 1222 and then up to the 1303. That's on what you're paying currently. But as Tim mentioned earlier, that levels out down at the 1210 and everybody's paying the same rate, and it is lower than that 10-year average. This chart also starts to show you where those numbers fit between the rest of your school districts around you. So at 1210, you're still below Essex, Shenandoah, Riverside, Sydney, Griswold, Trainer, Red Oak, Glenwood, all those surrounding school districts. You can do a $20 million project and still have a levy rate that is lower than all of those schools surrounding you. Does that make sense? So then if you want to see what that means to you as a taxpayer, you go back to those other charts, you look up your assessed valuation of your house, not your resale or your appraised value, but your assessed value. You look at that chart, you can see what that would mean to you based on a bump from this year's rates. Any questions on the kind of tax impact as a property owner in the school district? Okay, we're going to test you on that later. Another chart that I want to show you here that we've also updated, we've called it the cost of waiting. It's important to know that, you know, school districts, every school district that we work with has a fixed budget. I've never worked with a school district that just has an unlimited budget to let us do whatever we want. So you have a fixed budget, okay? That budget is going to probably be the same in 5 years as it is today. The difference is what you get in 5 years for that same fixed budget is different and obviously a lot less. So you can see we took 2019 as the baseline. That's the last year of real construction data we have. The 2020 COVID time kind of messed with some of our construction numbers, so we're trying to be conservative on some averages here. So in 2019, a $20 million project, that was $14.6 million in 2011, and that will be $24.8 million in 2025. So you can see weighting, all that does is you just keep pushing the cost of inflation and construction materials down the road. So if you have $20 million to spend, what you get in the future is less than what you would get today. Does that make sense? Enrollment analysis. So we presented some of this information also last time. We've got some new charts based on a number of questions that we received. We've got some new charts to help you understand this enrollment information. So you can see from 2011 to 2021, so over the past 10 years, your enrollment has decreased by a total of 74 students. It is good to point out there that from around the 2017, 18, 19 timeframe, things leveled off a little bit. There's a little bit of dip in there, but it came back. So that enrollment dip has hopefully leveled off, but you are down about 74 students over the past 10 years. In that same time frame, however, your open enrollment out has increased by 67 students. And that is a fairly consistent line up there. Your total open enroll out for the district is 147 students. So just for math, because I like math and so does Mr. Hood, just for a math scenario, that 147 students is, and we're not talking about schools as a business, but what that means to the school district is about $7,000 per student. So that $7,000 at 147 students is around $1 million a year that is not going into your general fund. It is going back out to other school districts because that money follows the students. So your general fund is 80% salaries and benefits for your teachers and your educators. So if you want to positively affect that and continue to pay teachers well, which is what your surveys have shown, you want to pay teachers well, you want to retain quality staff, you need to positively affect that general fund. And all of this ties together with facilities improvements, students coming here and changing these open enroll out numbers. We were asked if we could split up that open enroll and that open enroll in and the out information for you. So this chart is your open enrolled in. So you have 15 students from Glenwood open enrolling into your district. You have 1 from Lewis Central, 8 from Red Oak, and 8 from Fremont Mills. So that is your open enroll trend. This shows your open enroll in by grade. And it's very diverse, as you can see. That pie chart is pretty equal all the way around with anywhere from 2 to 4 students per grade. This chart represents your open enroll out and where it goes. So the big green chunk there of that 147 open enroll out, 99 of those students are going to Glenwood. 20 are going to Trainer, 14 are going to Fremont Mills, 12 are going to Riverside, 8 to Red Oak, 5 to Clayton Ridge, 2 to Council Bluffs, Lewis Central, Essex, and Sydney. So 147 students out, a big chunk of that, and 99 of them are going to Glenwood. I know this chart's going to be difficult for all of you to see, so I'll read off of it a little bit, but the gray area on this map is your school district boundary. So in the middle is Hastings, up at the top is Henderson, Emerson on the right side, Malvern over to the left. So what we've additionally tried to do for informational purposes and analysis of that is where are the students, where do they live, and where are they enrolling out to? So from the Emerson side, you've got 6 going to Red Oak, you've got some going to Glenwood, Riverside, it looks like Fremont Mills, and Clayton Ridge. Up in the Henderson area, You've got Riverside, and you've got Trainer for those students open and rolling out. Hastings, 1 to Red Oak, 1 to Glenwood. The big trend though is as you start to look at Malvern, Silver City, areas right here southwest of Malvern and right on the edge of your district, from Malvern west, you know, you've got 90 of those 99 Glenwood students is Malvern west as far as your open and roll out. Does this chart make sense to everyone? Again, these charts and PDFs of these will be available online. So if you want to look at it again, you can certainly check that out. But we did get this information from the school district and the addresses of where those open and roll outs were, and we plotted them on your map with your school district. We've also, as we've done these analysis, you'll hear me use the term top down and bottom up. You'll also hear me use the term program. When I talk about program, that's what you offer from your K through 12 programs and offerings in your school buildings. So when we look at a top-down method of your schools and we do an analysis by square footage, on the left is your current elementary building. It has a capacity for 368 students. It has an actual enrollment of 224. When we look on the right side of that chart, that's your junior, senior high building here. It has a capacity of 278 and an enrollment of 223. So again, this is the top-down method. I also have a bottom-up piece where we take every single space in the building and the square footage for it, and we start to calculate that out based on students using space. A good example for reference on that is if you have a classroom and that classroom is 1,000 square feet, that classroom is generally 1,000 square feet, whether you have 5 students in it or whether you have 25 students in it. You need that classroom to teach that subject or that component of the education, and that is generally the size of a classroom. So you need that whether you have 5 students or 25 students. So that's why we do the bottom up piece and we look at that. If we were going to build you a brand new school, the first step we do is we'd take 500 students times 200 square feet, and we'd start you out with 100,000 square feet of building. And that starts to move and fluctuate there depending on other needs you have in a school district. Maybe you want a big auditorium or performing arts space. Maybe you want a big indoor pool. Maybe you need extra CTE or industrial arts space. CTE is career technical education. You'll hear me use the term STEM, science, technology, engineering, math. Maybe those spaces need to be bigger. So we move that 100,000 up and down based on those additional needs, but that's the starting point. And so that's how we use this 200 square feet a student and come up with this top-down method as an analysis for how well your school buildings are being utilized. So the bottom line is you have more space than you have enrollment, which it can be a good thing. It gives you the ability to grow. It gives you the ability to have some bigger spaces, whether that's a larger CTE or bigger classrooms, more special education, those types of components. I want to talk about the community survey, the results from that last meeting. So every question we've asked where you were from. So we like to chart that. There's 86 respondents on the last survey, with 53 coming from Malvern, 3 from Hastings, 12 on Emerson, 3 in Henderson, and then 15 identified with rural, not associated with a town or community. We've thrown this chart in after a facilities committee meeting the other night, and this starts to show you the trend of how people have responded over the meetings. So meeting number 2 and meeting number 3, those bars are pretty level. You can see meeting number 4, the bar representing the rural went from 23 down to 15, and the green bar, which represents Malvern, went from that 24 number up to 53. So the last meeting had a lot more Malvern respondents participating in the survey. We asked a question in establishing objectives for this process. Can you agree with an East Mills first approach? 77 said yes, 2 said no. In establishing objectives, can you agree that providing the best education possible to the students of East Mills should be number one. Again, 82 responded yes, 1 decided, 1 undecided. We've asked this question a number of times in the survey, and this bar has not moved hardly at all between meetings. How important is the location of the school facility or facilities in your decision to support efforts to improve the district's education of the students? Location does not matter. This is on a scale of 1 to 5 from strongly disagree to strongly agree. Location does not matter. We must maintain 2 locations. The entire pre-K-12 should be located in Malvern, or the entire pre-K-12 should be located in the elementary site. We also had 4 options. We've started with 6. We whittled it down to 4. We're going to ask you about 3 of those here tonight, but we had the 4 options. Option B, which is renovate and update all schools, but we're not changing anything programmatically. They stay where they're at. This stays a 7-12. The elementary building stays your K-6. Option C was flipping the program. So when I talk about the program, again, program is your 7-12 and your K-6. So we would flip those. So the current building here in Malvern would become your K-6, your elementary building. Then your current elementary building would become your 7-12 facility. So that's option C. Option D is a pre-K-12 all at the elementary building. So that takes away this building in Malvern, and all of your school functions are at the current elementary building. Option E does the same thing, but only here in Malvern. This building becomes a K-12 building. Of the 4 options that we presented, B, C, D, and E, which option do you feel would have the most community support moving forward? 24 on option B, renovate both schools. Option C had 8 respondents, that's the flip schools. Option D, relocating to the elementary site, had 6, or option E, relocate at the Malvern site, had 41 responses. Of the 4 options presented tonight, B, C, D, and E, which option do you prefer? 48 responded relocate to the Malvern site, 10 to relocate to the elementary site, 7 on the flip schools scenario, and then 15 on the renovate both schools. So again, which one do you feel has the most community support versus which option do you prefer? You can see the differences in that particular chart. We also took that same kind of analysis because we've asked this question a number of times. You can see how this changes or stays steady from meeting 2, meeting 3, and meeting 4. So again, the blue line going up, which is option E, which is relocate pre-K-12 here to Malvern, had that response went from 26 to 48. You could also see on the first chart, there's a lot more people identifying with Malvern that participated in this last particular survey. Of the 2 options presented tonight, B and C, which option do you feel would have the most community support moving forward? So again, this question, we asked you to start comparing options so that we can start to narrow this focus down. Option B, renovate both schools, had 51 responses to option C, flipping the program of the schools. Of the 2 options presented, B and E, which would have the most support? So B is renovate the schools with 34, and E, relocate to the Malvern site with 43 responses. Of the 2 options presented, C and D, which would have the most community support? C is flip the schools with 59 versus D, which was relocate to the elementary site only. Of the 2 options presented, C and E, which do you feel would have the most community support? So C is flip schools with 22, and then E, relocate to the Malvern site with 55. In general, how likely would you support a property tax referendum to improve the East Mills School District and the education of its students? 66 responded highly likely, 3 very unlikely, and 10 undecided. How likely would you support a property tax referendum that located pre-K-12 to Malvern only? So again, you could see previous questions we asked, which options do you think would have the most support? Then we're asking, do you think that those would have a support in a property tax referendum? 56 responded highly likely, 14 very unlikely, and 10 undecided. How likely would you support a property tax referendum that located the pre-K-12 at the elementary site? 19 highly likely, 51 very unlikely, 10 undecided. So that was the survey and the survey results. So I kind of went through this last time on what does this all mean. The trends are very similar as the previous meetings. I want to emphasize that these are not the only ideas or concepts that and how we're going to present them, but we are going to continually refine these as we gather input from the community to get to a point where we believe everybody can agree on how to move forward with the school district, particularly related to facilities. There's a lot of passion towards providing the best solution for the students of East Mills. The economics of relocating a school building and what it means to the community is an important part of community pride in the schools. We need to balance what's best for a community versus what's best for the East Mills Community School District. So again, when I talk about East Mills first, it's what's best for the school versus what's best for any one individual community. While the most efficient and cost-effective solution is a pre-K-12 all on one site, that might not be the best solution for this particular school district. So that's just as a consultant looking from the outside, not taking into any of the past history, the emotion, the politics, or any of that play into rearranging schools. For the size of school district that you have, pre-K-12 all in one building is the most efficient scenario. The East Mills community generally supports moving forward with improvements. The East Mills community does not want to just maintain the status quo. So you notice we've taken that option off the table. While everyone understands that one pre-K-12 building is the most efficient to operate, there's a strong desire to still maintain 2 campuses in their location. There is a strong desire to move forward with an East Mills first approach, enhance community pride in the schools, and move forward with a community-based solution. So as Tim mentioned earlier, the tax impact is minimal. We need to reverse these trends. There's a lot of discussion on, we call it the shiny new object syndrome, right? So if you look at the school districts around you and the condition of the facilities, is that a factor in those 147 open enroll out? There is some discussion on the facilities committee that is a piece that is attractive to other parents and students when you see that newer facilities that schools have to offer that are adjacent to you. While everyone does understand that pre-K-12 building is the most efficient, what does that mean from a 2-campus scenario? We need to continue to work through that. And we're going to ask you to vote again in these surveys on those options here tonight. We've also got some additional questions for you related to things that affect your decision, whether it's one site in particular versus another. The community pride piece, we hear a lot about the childcare components. We hear a lot about where the elementary is located. So where do we want to be? So again, we started with these 6 ideas. We're down to 3. We want to ask you to participate again in a survey on that, with option B being renovating and updating all schools. We're not changing any programs. Elementary stays elementary, high school, junior, senior high year stays junior, senior high. Option C flips that program. So from a efficiency standpoint, or when you look at those charts and you see from Malvern West, 90 students going to Glenwood, is there a reason beyond just the shiny new object piece that may be causing those students to go to Glenwood? Perhaps it's transportation, parents taking their kids to the school district that's on their path to work in the Omaha Metro. Is there, when we look at the charts of Malvern to Glenwood from a mileage and minute standpoint, and Malvern to the elementary building, you're within 2 minutes of each other. So as a parent, are you making a decision to take your students to an elementary building that's on your way to work versus going the other direction, and then adding that time back to your commute. So that's where this whole outside picture, flip the programs piece comes into play if you want to potentially consider reversing that open and roll out trend. So if you're questioning why we would flip the schools, that's the reason we are basing that flipping of that program. Option E, pre-K-12 at the Malvern site. Again, as we've mentioned multiple times, a pre-K-12 all under one roof is your most efficient building type moving forward, from facilities maintenance and management to teachers and programs and sharing all those within a building. For consideration as you move forward, we've got some big cost ranges on there, and I mentioned that earlier. You should probably just consider that each one of those is going to be around a $20 million project. We'll push and take, those are blocks of space that we've put square footage to and cost per square feet. They're not individual plans. We've not detailed out exactly what every one of those wants to be. So look at those as all the same kind of a cost scenario. You get to choose which one is best. I also mentioned we wanted to introduce focus groups to get people to participate in some of these minute details as we start to go from a higher level down to what are the details of all of this. Students will have an opportunity to participate in these, as well as your teachers, community members. We have some additional surveys we're going to send out specifically for the students and specifically for parents and community members that have not attended these meetings. So we have 7 focus groups: STEAM and CTE, again, career technical education, science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, information technology, learning environments, community pride, athletics and activities, the behind the scenes, and the financial. So the STEAM CTE focus group, maker spaces, 3D printing, laser cutting, welding, building trades programs. Do you want to start building houses with a trades program in your school system to help handle that demand for housing in the county? Workforce development, the jobs data related to that, agriculture, automotive, and then other things. So if you're interested in any of those topics, this is a focus group for you. Information technology, what are the power constraints? You have buildings that were built long before the idea of having one-to-one computer programs in your school system. There's a lot of power constraints on that. Internet access issues. What is the future of your one-to-one computer programs? BYOD, bring your own device. That is something we see a lot in the business world these days. Bringing your own device, getting it hooked up. Peer-to-peer learning. You know, it's one thing for a teacher to sit there and tell a student how to do a particular function or action on a computer, but when you can sit down with students and they can learn from their friends sitting next to them, they're going to learn a whole lot more than they're ever going to learn about technology from that particular teacher. Same goes along with a Genius Bar. If you are a fan of Apple and you've ever been to an Apple store, you can go get help with your particular device. We've seen these types of help desks in schools. Students can go in and get help with how to use their computer, how to use a program. How do I make this PowerPoint animated? How do I make this video? And oftentimes those are then staffed by students. You have students that want to help other students. The students run that Genius Bar piece. Remote access, online classrooms, and other concerns. So if you're interested in information technology, that's your focus group. The learning environments focus group. So you'll hear me talk about 21st century learning components, daylighting in your classrooms, flexible furniture, breakout spaces, going from a traditional stand, sit, lecture style to small group learning to one-on-one learning, and how can you do that in a classroom all within the same teaching period. Furniture test drives, that's another component we can help introduce here. So this building in particular has some smaller classrooms. We may not have the ability to go in and change the walls and reconfigure all those classrooms, but we can bring in furniture that will help help make those classrooms more usable And we can bring those in as a test drive. So students and teachers can test them out before we would actually buy a whole bunch of furniture for your classrooms to affect that space. Integration of online learning, the teachers' desks, room scheduling something from the higher education model coming down that we're starting to see in the K-12. So it may not be a classroom that's 100% dedicated to science or math. It's a classroom that the teachers move to lecture or teach in, as well as the students. Community pride focus group. So East Mills first, the school's brand. You have this great informational marquee out in front. How do we make that even better? I have letter jackets on there, and that concept is just seeing students from East Mills out in amongst all the communities and being prideful with them with those letter jackets or those school colors on. Do you have a community service day with any of your communities that make up your school district? Booster clubs and sponsorship, signage and graphics, and then what is your alumni network and how do you tap into that, particularly as it relates to school projects? We have an athletics and activities focus group. This is your gym space, your fields, your tracks. It's also weight rooms. It's an auditorium. It's your visual and performing arts, band, vocal, choir, pep band, marching band, dance teams, cheerleaders, all of those kind of components that go into the athletics and activities. The behind the scenes, this is your maintenance, your food service, transportation, your administration offices, nurses' offices. We have a lot of information on reconfiguring nurses' offices, particularly as we've gone through this COVID time and what that means for schools moving forward. Counselor spaces, school board meeting rooms, and then this is where your early childhood and your daycare component would fit. So if you're passionate about that daycare piece, this focus group is for you. Then we have a financial focus group. So again, that's a lot of the information that we've put together. It's educating yourself on that and how we can tailor that information to make sure that the rest of the community understands it. Your historical levy rates, your sources and uses, what that bond means, what that 10-year average is, what that increase is. This is also where we talk about enrollment trends, your open enroll, what those dollars mean to a school district, and those operating costs. Any questions on the focus groups? So the survey tonight, we're going to ask you to go back through, give us your input again on the options, where you feel the support is at, where you feel the best option is, and then to also sign up for the focus groups. Our hope is that we will get one focus group meeting in for each one of those before the next community meeting, and we will be able to present some information and data from that focus group at that next community meeting. So grab your smartphone. If you don't have a smartphone, we've got some hard copies and some pens here. Just raise your hand and we'll get you one. But the code for this, if you participated previously, you get your phone out, you go to menti.com, and you enter the code 2528561. as you finish up that survey there, I just want to talk a little bit about schedule again. I do this at every meeting just to kind of recap where we're at and where some of these deadlines are at. I've mentioned previously that you can't go through a process like this and then just say, you know, hey, I think we want to have a bond issue to support this facilities improvements. The state tells you when you can run those bond issue elections on a yearly basis. So the next one coming up is in September, at the beginning of September. So if the facilities committee and the school board decided that they felt there was enough community support and enough consensus here that they wanted to move forward with that, we would have to wrap this process up by the end of June in order for the school board to take all of their legal actions, public hearings, signature campaign, all of those components to get to that point where they can advertise that there's a bond issue election coming up and then run that election in September. If you don't feel, or if they don't feel that there's enough support for that, the next one that they can do is actually in November. That's your general election timeframe. We wouldn't necessarily think that's the best time to run a school bond election, but it's certainly on the calendar. If they felt that there was support to do that, that is the next one. After that, we have a March timeframe for an election date. A couple of other things related to that. If you do run one in September, the state says you have to wait 6 months before you can run another election. Unfortunately, that March one that I just told you about falls a week shy of that 6-month wait time. So you would actually, if you run one in September, and if it were not successful, you would have to wait till the following September as the next time that you could run an election. So you lose a whole year in that process. That cost of waiting chart I showed you where what it costs to go up. So that's why it's important that we go through this process. We get as much engagement as possible so that when that facilities committee and that school board make that decision to move forward, that they feel that they are going to have success when they run that campaign. Again, the school board and the facilities committee, nobody's decided anything about that's what they're going to do, but I want to make sure you have that information and everybody is aware of that as we move forward. I've told you a couple of times we have a project website for this facilities process and everything. I do know from just tracking that people are going to the school's website. They are clicking on the school's link to this and they are getting to this website and spending a little bit of time on it. You're able to see past meetings, past presentations. You're able to download PDF copies of past presentations if you want to see any of that. And then we leave those surveys open for about 2 weeks after every meeting. So if you were not able, if you know someone who was not able to be here at the meeting tonight, you can tell them, hey, you can go watch Derek talk for an hour about how awesome this process is, how great it is that the school district and the school board is asking for our opinion. And then you can go ahead and take the survey and participate in that piece. So again, if you know somebody who wasn't here and they've been here before, they want to be able to participate, they can go to that website, see the presentation, see a PDF of the presentation, and then also participate in the survey. You can get to that website from the school's website. There's a link on there. So emschools.org, then you can click and get to that. The next community engagement meeting is June 2nd. That's at the elementary building. So that gives us a little bit of time from June 2nd to the end of June to wrap up any of this should the school board decide that they're going to move forward with any kind of an election component. In the meantime, from now to that June 2nd, if you signed up for a focus group, I'll be giving you a shout through email mostly to try and set up a time where we can get together and go through that focus group information. We're also going to send out surveys to students. We're going to send out surveys to teachers, and we've got some surveys that are going to go out to parents that are not at these meetings. So they'll be looking for those surveys to go out and for that information to also be presented at the next meeting. Are there any questions that anybody wants to ask here tonight? If not, I will stick around if you have a question you want to come up and chat with me about. Are there any questions for the people on Zoom attending remotely?
Not yet.
Okay, there's no questions for the people participating remotely, but it looks like Jan has a question back there or a comment. The question is how many people are on Zoom, and I believe when I had Daniel check last at the survey, there was about 15 people on. Hey, Jan, if you wouldn't mind coming up here, grabbing the mic and letting me switch the input so we can make sure everybody can hear and it gets recorded.
Derek, I also have one question on Zoom.
To approve. And just to give you an idea of what it's like. Tonight there were 5 students that were open enrolling in or out. 2 of those were open enrolling in, which is positive. 3 of those, which are all one family, were open enrolling out. They were open enrolling out to Glenwood. The reason why is because they had recently moved to the East Mills district, but the children had been attending Glenwood schools. So they open enrolled out to continue where they were having their education. That happens quite a bit as well. And that's just another caveat of this ongoing changing open enroll in and open enroll out. Just to make you aware that's one of the things that can happen.
Thank you. So I do think there's a question that was asked in Zoom. So I'll tell it to me in my ear and I will repeat it for everyone out there.
Derek, do you mind switching the mics?
Is that better?
Yep.
Okay, what's the
2
question?
questions. For a vote to pass, do we need 60% of the voters or 60% of eligible voters?
Okay, the question is voting and passing a vote. And it's specifically related to that supermajority, which I think we've told you before is 60%. The question is it 60% of the people that show up and vote, or is it 60% of the eligible voters in the district? And the answer is it's the people that show up to vote.
And then another question is, are the focus groups / committees explained on the website?
The question is, will the focus groups that we presented there, will they be explained on the website? So that same information that we had on the screen will be put on the website. So if you want to take a little more time to decide if you want to participate in a focus group, you can certainly do that and reread through all of those slides and what that information is. Yes, we'll let you do that.
Okay, I have one more. The question is, how do the open enrollment in and out percentages of East Mills compare to neighboring districts?
This is a good question, and I'm going to have to do more research on it. But the question that they asked on Zoom there is, how does the open enroll information that was presented here tonight for East Mills, how does that compare to other school districts? So I would imagine what they're looking for is, what is Glenwood's open enroll in and out? What is Red Oak's open enroll in and out? What is Fremont Mills? And I believe that we can get that information and put that in a chart also. Did you have a question? The survey results from this last meeting, we would typically present those at the next meeting. So the question was, how soon will the survey results from tonight be out? we leave that survey open for about 2 weeks. And then we will have I believe we scheduled another facilities committee meeting that is about 2 weeks from now. And then that will be presented there. And then also at the next community meeting on June 2nd. Yes.
Is there information already out there as far as the actual physical size of each class per student base, as far as how many students are in 3rd grade?
Yes. Okay. So the question is there information out there as far as how many students there are per class? That is on one of those charts that I had up there. The chart where I looked at the top-down square footage analysis. The piece on the right shows current certified enrollment per grade.
Well, the reason I asked is how does that compare to directly to the surrounding schools? I didn't see that. As far as how big is Red Oak's equivalent class size and all the surroundings?
Okay, so the question is, can we compare that information to some other school districts? We do have probably the ability to get that and show a chart similar to that also.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just kind of facilities. I know we had left that district a few years ago. And that was that push to like competition with other schools in Nebraska City and Central. There was a competition against students. But we see, I know they had the flood, and I think there's an article about their numbers going down. We find out a little bit more how that facility said impacted them in a positive, negative, kind of flat. So that way, if we decide to want the facility improvement, I'm more mostly geared towards athletics.
So your question is related to facilities improvement from the flood, from the
just enrollment. Did that improve their enrollment? Did it lower the enrollment? I thought they were. Yeah, the whole school. Yeah. So they had improved their athletics, improve their enrollment.
I will say you're asking a pretty finite question there about, did an enrollment improve? Did just with the athletics? Okay, so Glenwood did a big football field, track, softball, baseball project, and has their enrollment gone up after that? I mean, I guess we could look and see what their enrollment was for this year and if it went up, but that would be I don't know that we can, it's subjective of if that enrollment increase is based on the activities space that they just did or the, the football field.
Well, it sounds like one of those shiny object things.
And then, I mean, that's kind of that is a bit subjective, but we can certainly try and let's start with what is Glenwood's enrollment trend, what is their open enroll in, and just see where that goes. I mean, we can do data to death. I mean, we can show you charts and history. It's what are we going to do with that information, and how are we going to use that to positively affect East Mills moving forward?
You've done a lot of school projects. It's more general experience, I guess anecdotally without the data, that if you do a school improvement project, that does help enrollment trends.
So the question is, does a facilities improvement project help affect enrollment trends? The general answer to that is yes, facilities projects affect enrollment trends. There's a number of factors that go into anything related to getting people to move to a community, getting families to move to a community and put their kids in your school. Jobs, job location, internet connection, availability of housing, and then schools. What's the school system like? So it's kind of all of those together that help affect that particular piece. Most every school that we've worked with that's done a facilities improvement, they see a number of things. Yes, they see their if it's an enrollment decline, they see that level off, they see it somewhat increase. You never reverse. I mean, you can't reverse 10 years of open enroll out in 2 years after a facilities project. That just doesn't happen. You do have advantages with population growth, housing being built, you know, an expanding and exploding Omaha metro area, and overbuilt Glenwood. The natural progression is just going to be moving this direction.
And I still think probably, you said, I think you mentioned it earlier, still one of the biggest things that we see probably for the folks that open enroll out of our district is probably job and transportation and where they're going to work and taking their kids to be able to go to some of those functions in relation to trying to come back. Because you did mention that, I think, about a lot of us do transportation routes. Not that that's anything that changes, and it's not really a question, but I do think it's some of the bigger reasons why we do see that enrollment that way.
So the comment, and I'm repeating your comments just so it gets recorded and everybody on Zoom can hear here, but the comment is with the open enroll out, you know, that transportation piece and where the different grade levels are at. I don't have any concrete economic data that I can show you on that. We have information that has been presented either in comment form on the surveys or from other community members that have reached out and said, hey, you know, we feel that we're losing a bunch of people to Glenwood because when it comes to that time of, you know, I'm a parent, I work in Omaha, and I want to be able to drop my kid off when they're ready for school or daycare. I want to be able to drop them off at the elementary building in the town and then head up to Omaha for work. And if you have to drive 12 miles east or 12 minutes east and then continue that back, you've added 20 to 30 minutes to your commute time in the morning to head to your job in Omaha. That's the comments that we've gotten back. That is why, you know, as you look at that, why we've proposed that flip schools scenario where you could, if you want to capture those kids and capture them early, you got to capture them at that pre-kindergarten, kindergarten age, and what do you need to do that? And so possibly flipping your elementary and your junior, senior high sites may help with that. Yes.
But if you go into the school district's board meetings, past meetings, last year when our daughter went to graduate from Glenwood, the enrollment was 2,126 kids. It's in the food service report because they have to know how many kids are available for food service. And this year's enrollment is 2,055.
So the question or the comment there was, someone quickly looked up Glenwood's enrollment. The previous year was 2,166. It's 2,055. So they've actually had an enrollment. 20, okay. 21, 26, and it's 2,055. So they've had an enrollment drop over the past year. Yeah, graduation. I mean, you could just have a number of things that affect that in particular. Mr. Hood would like to address the audience. I'm going to switch the mics on the computer here.
If we did a project, and that project was the $20 million range, our property taxes here went to $12.10. Okay, you would be $3.88 under Glenwood. You would be $3.34 under Red Oak. You would be $2.16 under Trainer, and you cents under Riverside. Those are the 4 districts that we lose our most open enrollment kids to. So to me, that's a very telling thing. Those are big numbers, 388, 334, 216, and $1.
What you don't want to do is have people move to your school district, pay the lower taxes, and then send their kids to a different school. So to pile on to Mr. Hood's comment there, you can do a $20 million project and still be under. So that would create the schools piece, whether it's the shiny new object piece, whatever that is, from activities offering, whatever that is. You have the school piece as well as the housing to be able to keep people here, or at least when they move here, get them to look at enrolling their kids in the school district here. Are there any other questions? Is there anything on Zoom?
We just have a comment about enrollment. It says every school, they've done some research on school district enrollment in Iowa. Almost every school has had a decline in certified enrollment due to COVID and students going virtual or homeschooling.
So there was just a comment about declining enrollment across all of Iowa schools because of COVID and online enrollment. That's just a comment that's in the Zoom world. I would want to verify that just to see where that is at for sure.
As a state, the loss was about 4,000 students overall from the previous year.
So Mr. Hood is saying as a whole, the state has lost around 4,000 students. Okay, I will stick around if there's any other questions after this, but thank you all for attending. Make sure you tell your friends and your family to check out the presentation and answer the survey as well. Thank you.